Hi, and welcome to Robust Science Teaching with just 3 tools. Today I'm going to go through how to have robust science teaching that's interactive for you and your students. And you're just going to use 3 tools to do it. One of the tools is using Google Slides. The other is using breakout rooms, whether you're on Zoom or Google Classroom, or there's a number of other platforms where you might be able to put students into breakout rooms. And finally, the third one is the Google add-on called Jamboard. With just those 3 tools, you can have students interacting with each other, doing models. You can guide discussion and consensus discussion and a whole bunch of other things. So thank you for joining me today. I have this not in present mode because one of the tips that I wanted to share with you is that once you make your slides so that students can join the slide deck, you'll be able to use this to tell where students are in the slide deck. And you might use it for something like, when you're finished on slide 2, please join me on slide 4. And you can see the students' circles going down and going to the slide that you would like them to go on to. So one of the things that I wanted to share, and it's absolutely necessary, is that the students need to be able to edit. And so how you would do that is you would go into the share settings. And you can see here that I've selected anyone with the link, but there are restricted and the school district that you might be teaching in. And I've also made it so that students are editors, because they need to be able to get onto the slide deck and they need to be able to type on it. Then I would copy the link for them and I would click done. Now, what are some ways that I could share this link with students? Well, one is if you are using Zoom, you can put it in the chat. Another way is that you could put it into Google Classroom, and you could also email it to students as well. Or whatever, if you aren't using Google Classroom, whatever the system is that you're using that supports your students' learning. So now that students have access to the slide deck, they're able to type where I ask them to type and to do different things. I would like to take a quick pause and thank Dr. Teresa Wills. She offers free templates for teachers to use, and I have been using her materials all summer, and the templates are truly wonderful and you can edit them. So that saves a lot of time. So if you go to her website and look at some of the templates that she has there, choose templates that are helpful to you and make copies, and then you can use them over and over in your Google slide deck. The next thing that I wanted to show you is that I always start my classes checking in with kids and giving them a space to be in the slide deck and to communicate with me how they're doing. So this is one way you can do that. You can see that there are 4 different emotions represented, and I have some shapes here that students can move around. If you want them to work on the tool of using a shape and copying and pasting in the slide deck, that can be part of your instructions. Or you can copy a number of stars or whatever shape you want them to use, and so that when they get to the slide deck, they can actually move it and answer the question using those shapes. You can create 2 or 3 copies of the slide so that not all students are working and trying to grab the same stars. They can resize them. It really doesn't matter. You can make it your own, and you can add your own questions in there for what you want students to do. In the next slide, on slide 4, I have used the same template, but I've created boxes on the top so that students can give me more of an idea of what they were thinking or why they selected to put their star where they did. So they can actually type in these, again, because I've made the slides editable so students can go in and type what they need. You can see that I've added a few slides on this slide deck for students so that they have space to type. The next thing that I'd like to show you is, again, using those great templates that Teresa Wills has created to signal to students what's coming next. And I would use the purple slide, and I always use purple, to indicate that we're going to be watching a video together. And this particular video comes from 7-6. It shows students that are taking Q-tips and they're touching different parts of the tongue to show how tasting occurs. So the assignment for students is that they watch this video, and I've given them something to think about. Now, what I would suggest doing is, again, using a template, which you can see on slide 7, to provide students an opportunity to type. And again, they can type in these because you've made them editable. And I put a different question on the top of here from a different lesson in My Star, but you could ask them whatever you wanted. If I wanted it to go with the video that's above, I would put the question for the video there. You can see here that I've numbered the boxes. One way to use these boxes is to assign students a number. So I know that if I am always box 19, they can scroll down and find box 19 and they can type. Another way would be to actually add student names to the boxes. You can do whichever you prefer. I prefer, at least now, putting student names in the boxes. And just a teacher trick, I would take this template, I would put student names in the boxes, and I would save a master. So I have a master that says first hour, and I have all of these boxes created with the kids' names so that anytime I want to use them in any of my lessons, I can just copy and paste the slides. I don't have to recreate the boxes and retype all the students' names every single time. So that's just a tip. You can see next that we have an independent activity. Again, using the same color all of the time helps students know what's coming and provides some consistency for students. The instructions here for them to grab a piece of scrap paper and start thinking about an initial model and be ready to share. Again, I want to review that so far, all we've done is we've worked in Google Slides. And yet my students have been able to let me know how they're doing or maybe answer a question. They've watched a video and they've had space to type their responses to a question that I've asked. What I'd like to show you next are some roles that I would still give students even if they are not in front of me. If they're in a breakout room with 3 or 4 students, they still have a job to do when they're there. One of the jobs that is going to go with the next slide requires students and student groups to read an article together. So you might choose to make that one of your jobs. You could have one of the students be a secretary if you want their group to type on a whole group slide. There's a number of ways that you can do this, but this is really just good practice. You would do this if you were face-to-face. There's no reason that you can't do it when you're working remotely. So the next slide that we have is blue, and you can see that this is for breakout rooms. When my students see this in the slide deck, they know that they're going to be doing a group activity. When we come to this blue slide here, we're going to add our last 2 tools that were promised in this particular presentation. We're going to be using Jamboard, and we're going to be going into breakout rooms. Jamboard is a really good space for, it just provides a student whiteboard. And I would do this out of the slide deck, not use Google Slides, because it gives the students and student groups a place that's not really in the clutter of the student or the slide guide. And there's different tools that they can use when they're in Jamboard. So all I did was I made this a link to Jamboards that I created ahead of time. And I'm going to quickly click on this link and show you that this would take students to directly to the Jamboard that I made. I made this a copy because this is a master copy that was created for multiple teachers to use. So I wanted to make sure that they created their own copy. But you can see that I'm able to add things as a teacher before my students even go to Jamboard. One is if I want them to use an image to start a model, I might put that on there. I could also add sticky notes. Jamboard has the ability to assign different colors. So you could even have students be a different color sticky note and work within the they can add images from the web, they can add shapes, they can add text boxes, there's a spot for markers and highlighters and so on. And you can create as many boards as you need for your groups. And what I always tell my students is that board 4 is going to be for breakout room 4 and so on. Just like Google Slides though, you have to make sure that you change the share setting, and it's exactly the same process as you would do for Google Slides. You just have to make sure that the kids are able to work on them. And one of the nice things about Jamboard is that when you create these Jamboards, it keeps them for you. So you can see that I've done other Jamboards with students and that I'm able to look at different things that they've done, and it kind of keeps them. So if I were in the classroom, these might be big pieces of white butcher paper that I would keep, but I don't need to do that because now I can save them digitally and have access to them. And if I wanted kids to revisit a model, I simply could open up a Jamboard link that they've used in a prior lesson and give that to them again and have them make changes based on things that they've learned. Okay, so in this particular one, this is again the breakout room activity. You would be assigning them breakout rooms in Zoom or whatever platform you're using. They would go into the breakout room, they would have their Jamboard open, and they would be able to do exactly what you asked them to do. As a teacher, I can sit here at my computer and I can look at their Jamboards. I can flip through all the Jamboards and I can see what student groups are doing. I would have a pad of paper. I would be writing down misconceptions that I'm seeing or questions that I want to know more about. And I can also go in and visit rooms where I'm seeing, oh, there's not much on that Jamboard. What are they doing? And then I can go in there and ask some questions. One teacher trick that I would extend to you is to have student groups add a pink sticky note to the bottom corner and say finished or done on it, because that signals to me as the teacher that that group thinks they're done. And I could go in and ask them questions to make sure that they really are done. And it kind of also lets me know who needs more time. If I'm seeing a lot of pink sticky notes on the Jamboards, I know that I can probably close the breakout rooms and we can start our consensus discussion. Which leads me to the next part. So what do we do with these Jamboards and how do we use them for discussion? Well, here's one way. You can simply give them a chart with similarities and differences and tell them, okay, each go through the Jamboards, give them a certain amount of time with mics off so that it's quiet, and have them record similarities and differences that they see in the models or patterns that they're noticing. You can make the titles of these columns whatever you want, but I usually do similarities and differences. You can create as many copies of these slides as you want. You could make these text boxes bigger for students to write or type. One suggestion is have the kids put their name or initial after the similarity or differences that you assign, because they'll actually do it. So I might say, okay, you need to do 2 similarities and 2 differences and type your initials after you're done. And that way I know that students are doing the work. I can use these charts to, again, guide a consensus discussion. If I'm seeing that there's a pattern and a lot of students are typing, we're noticing that everybody has taste buds on the side of their tongue. That's something that I might bring up in discussion, see if we can agree upon it. The differences are where we can have some really good discussion about things that we're noticing that are different and what's important to include in a model or what's important to understand about a science word. Another way that teams can provide feedback or individuals can provide feedback to those Jamboard slides are using interactive tools. So students can leave a green sticky note with a comment. Maybe that you have them ask a question on a green sticky note. Leave a comment on a yellow sticky note. They could use a highlighter. They could use an emoji. They could find something online that they like to use to give feedback. They could also put things in the chat. This would go into the main chat if you were using Zoom, for example. They could leave comments that way. Again, as a teacher, I would be looking through the comments that people were leaving, and I could use those to prompt my questions and guide my discussion. A suggestion for consensus statements, since I'm asking questions and I'm trying to get the kids to talk to each other, you might ask another student to be the typist for consensus statements. So you don't have to worry about managing that if you want. And then the final thing is just to show you that students can use the feedback and use the consensus discussion to go back and to make any changes or additions that they want. So there is the ability to go back and revisit, and again, using that pink sticky note to signify when groups are done. And that's really using 3 tools to have robust science instruction and have students actually participating in your lessons. Just to remind you, we used Google Slides, we used Jamboard, and we've used student groups in Zoom or whatever you're using for your meetings to have interaction and good discussion. Thank you for your attention, and I hope to talk with you again soon.